Hello, my dear friends. What would you do if one day you woke up and realized that the person you've shared nearly 2 decades of your life with, your partner in everything, had sold all your assets, emptied your home, and left you with nothing but cold divorce papers? Not everyone faces a shock like that. But today, you're about to hear the true story of a man who was the steady rock of his family until he gave up everything to care for his terminally ill mother, only to be betrayed at the lowest point in his life. What makes this story special isn't just the betrayal. It's how he responded, not with shouting, not with immediate revenge, but with quiet calculation and careful planning. A plan so precise it forced his wife and her secret lover to pay dearly in court, with the very things they tried to steal: his wealth, his dignity, and his freedom. This isn't just a revenge story. It's a wake-up call, a lesson in awareness, trust, and how to protect yourself even in love. Do you enjoy courtroom revenge sagas? Or those dramatic twist stories where the underdog flips the script? Drop a comment and let us know what kind of story you want next. And don't forget to subscribe to Tom Revenge Stories, where you don't just hear stories, you learn how to rise from them. My name is Gavin Pierce. I'm 46 years old, a senior IT analyst based in Colorado, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a stable life, a good career, a quiet house, a wife I trusted. 18 years of marriage doesn't come easy, especially when you've spent most of it trying to make someone else feel secure. Lauren and I met in our late 20s. We moved fast, fell in love quicker than we probably should have. We were married within a year, bought our first house by year 3, and settled into the rhythm of adulthood. We didn't have kids, not by choice but by circumstance. At first, it brought us closer. But over time, the silence in our home became less peaceful and more empty. I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice things changing. The texts that once had emojis and inside jokes turned into one-word replies. The evening conversations became quick check-ins, more like status reports than connection. She stopped waiting up for me when I had late-night projects. She stopped asking about my work, stopped sharing anything about hers. But I chalked it up to routine. 18 years with someone changes how you communicate. Or so I thought. Then my mother, Diane, was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. She lived in Texas alone. I'm an only child. My father passed 10 years ago, and there was no question what I had to do. I applied for extended family medical leave, packed a few bags, and flew out to take care of her. Lauren didn't argue. In fact, she barely reacted. Just nodded and asked, "How long do you think you'll be gone?" Not, "Do you want me to come?" Not, "How are you holding up?" Just logistics. I tried not to let it bother me. She was busy with work, she's in real estate, and I knew her clients could be demanding. But still, we were supposed to be a team. Over the next 2 months, I spent my days cooking bland meals, driving my mom to chemo appointments, and watching her slowly drift between moments of sharpness and silence. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but also one of the most meaningful. Lauren called once every few days. Sometimes I'd call and it would go to voicemail. She'd text back hours later, busy showing a property. Call later. There was a tone shift I couldn't explain, a distance in her voice. But I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and assumed I was just being paranoid. I never expected that her silence wasn't born from stress or sadness, but from calculation. One morning, after barely sleeping on the couch in my mom's living room, I opened my email to find a subject line that didn't make sense. Subject: "Let's not drag this out." Clicked it, blinking as the words loaded. "Gavin, I've decided to move forward with the divorce. This isn't working for me anymore. I need a fresh start. I've taken some of the furniture, just the pieces I paid for. The house needs clearing out anyway. Please don't contact me directly. I'll have my lawyer reach out." Attached were 3 photos. Our living room stripped bare, the garage emptied, and a final shot of a manila envelope on our kitchen counter. My name scribbled in Sharpie. Divorce papers. My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter. It just stopped for a moment. The way your brain freezes when something doesn't compute. Like a glitch in a system you thought you built perfectly. And then came the second shock. I checked our joint account. Not just one, all our accounts. 0. Every savings account we had together, including the one I used for emergency expenses and our travel fund, had been drained. Tens of thousands gone in a matter of days. She didn't even wait until my mom's final weeks were over. She struck while I was gone, at my most vulnerable. While I was helping the woman who raised me fight for her life. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just cold. But here's the thing Lauren didn't know. I saw it coming. Not this exact move, but the trajectory. 6 months earlier, after noticing strange transfers between accounts and her subtle shifts in behavior, I'd spoken to my sister, Chloe, a family law attorney. We created a shell company, moved assets, transferred the house deed, opened private investment accounts. All legal, all documented, all solely in my name. I never told Lauren. She never asked. I didn't do it out of malice. I did it out of survival instinct. And now it was time to use it. Have you ever ignored your gut, thinking you're just being paranoid, only to find out you were spot on? I didn't respond to her email. No angry reply, no threats, no begging, just silence. Because while Lauren thought she'd caught me off guard, what she didn't realize was that I had already started protecting myself months before she sent that cold message. Back then, I couldn't explain why I felt something was off. But the feeling had been gnawing at me like termites behind wallpaper. Quiet, invisible, destructive. There were little things. Receipts that didn't match the places she said she'd been. Mysterious Venmo charges. A sudden interest in managing her own finances, despite never caring about bills before. Late nights out for networking events, and unexplained spa weekends with friends whose names I'd never heard. She stopped sharing. But more than that, she started hiding. So I did what any cautious man with an IT background and a lawyer for a sister would do. I started keeping receipts of my own. Chloe, being who she is, didn't ask many questions. Just nodded when I came to her with my concerns. Let's draw a line between yours, hers, and ours, she said. Then, if anything ever happens, you're protected. With her help, I created a private LLC, legit, transparent, and clean. We used it to retitle the house, which Lauren was never involved in financing anyway. She never even noticed. Too busy to show up for the mortgage paperwork. I signed everything. From there, I opened a few solo investment accounts, nothing flashy. Just a place to quietly reroute a portion of my direct deposit. Something Lauren wouldn't see when she logged into our shared banking dashboard. To her, the numbers stayed consistent. To me, they were quietly shifting out of her reach. When she filed for divorce while I was in Texas, she thought she had control. She believed she'd cleaned me out and left me broken. She didn't know the accounts she drained were the decoys. The real wealth was elsewhere. Secured. Traced. Firewalled tighter than any of her lies. But I still needed to act fast. After reading her email for the third time, I stood from my mom's dining table, grabbed my laptop, and started typing. First, I logged into every account she didn't know existed. Checked balances. Confirmed transfers. Everything was untouched. Second, I drafted a timeline, messages, dates, receipts, screenshots of our dwindling conversations. Every interaction that showed a pattern, her pulling away, me reaching out, her refusal to engage. Not to weaponize, but to prove. Then I called Chloe. I'm ready, I said. Figured you would be, she replied. I'll start the paperwork. But you need to come back. Quietly. And not to your house. She arranged for me to stay at her friend's guest house, secluded, safe, off the radar. We didn't want Lauren to know I'd returned to Colorado just yet. While I was still in Texas, I'd filed a temporary change of address and had all my mail rerouted. Another thing Lauren didn't notice, or maybe didn't care to. By the time I touched down in Denver, she still believed I was hundreds of miles away, tending to a dying parent. And in a way, I was. Except now, a part of me had already died too. The part that trusted her. At Chloe's place, I laid low for a few days. I needed time to breathe, to think, to stop shaking every time my phone buzzed with a notification. Meanwhile, she was moving quickly. Chloe filed for an emergency injunction to freeze our remaining joint assets, which admittedly weren't much but enough to flag the courts. Enough to open the door to a financial misconduct case. I called my employer and extended my leave indefinitely. Told them a vague version of the truth. Family emergency now complicated by personal matters. They understood. I'd always been reliable. Next, I hired a private investigator not to dig up dirt but to confirm what I already suspected. Within 72 hours, I had photos. Lauren wasn't just draining accounts. She was spending them on hotel rooms, weekend trips, shopping sprees, and always with the same man. At first, I didn't recognize him. But when Chloe saw the photos, her jaw tensed. "Thomas?" she muttered. "Thomas?" I asked, confused. "Thomas Reynolds. You remember him? From college. You used to help him with comp sci assignments." I blinked. Thomas Reynolds was her divorce attorney. I laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of disbelief. She was sleeping with her lawyer. You ever have one of those moments where it all clicks? Too late to stop the train, but just in time to jump off before it derails. That was me staring at a man I once considered a friend, now weaponized against me. Lauren wasn't acting alone. This wasn't an emotional breakdown. It wasn't a messy, emotional exit. It was planned, calculated, and now it was personal. 3 weeks. That's how long I laid low, staying off the grid while Chloe and my legal team built the case. 3 weeks of watching from the shadows. 3 weeks of Lauren living her new life, spending my money, posing with her lawyer boyfriend, and acting like I had already been erased. But I wasn't gone. I was collecting. By the end of those 3 weeks, we had a GPS-tagged photos of Lauren and Thomas checking into multiple hotels across state lines. A credit card statements showing purchases that matched their getaway weekends. Phone logs proving late-night calls between them dating back 6 months. And the most important detail of all, a digital trail showing Lauren's access to our shared accounts during the exact days I was sitting by my mother's hospital bed. This wasn't a woman reacting emotionally. This was someone who had planned my disappearance from her life right down to the last withdrawal. It was time. The first court hearing was set for a Friday morning at 9:30 a.m. The courtroom wasn't packed. Just us, our lawyers, and a clerk who looked half asleep. But inside me, everything was on fire. I wore a navy suit. Nothing fancy. But the tie, I chose that tie on purpose. It was the one Lauren had given me on our 10th anniversary. Back when we still believed in forever. Lauren walked in 10 minutes late, of course. Thomas right behind her. Both of them dressed like they were heading to a magazine cover shoot. She didn't look at me. Not once. But I could see it. The tightness in her jaw. The way she kept adjusting her sleeve. The slight tremble in her fingers when she sat down. She wasn't as confident as she pretended. Thomas leaned over and whispered something. She nodded. I still forward. The judge entered. Honorable Meredith Connors. Late 50s. Stern. Efficient. No nonsense. She glanced at the docket, then looked directly at me. Mr. Marshall, I understand you've filed an emergency motion regarding unauthorized account activity. Yes, Your Honor. And you're alleging that your wife, while you were out of state on a family medical leave, drained your joint accounts without consent. I nodded. Correct. And I have documentation to support that. I was in Texas caring for my terminally ill mother. During that time, Ms. Marshall emptied multiple accounts, removed property, and filed for divorce, without informing me or attempting to resolve anything directly. Thomas stood up, voice smooth. Your Honor, my client acted within her legal rights. These were joint accounts. She was simply exercising her access. Furthermore, Mr. Marshall had moved significant assets into a private LLC without disclosing them to his wife. We believe that was the true act of deception here. Judge Connors didn't flinch. Mr. Reynolds, we'll get to your concerns. But for now, let's talk about timing. She turned to Lauren. Ms. Marshall, were you aware that your husband was out of state during the time you withdrew these funds? Lauren hesitated. Just a moment, but it was enough. I thought he'd left me, she said. He was distant. He stopped calling. I assumed our marriage was already over. The judge raised an eyebrow. So, rather than seek clarification or legal separation, you chose to drain the accounts without discussion? I was hurt, she added quickly. I didn't know what else to do. Chloe stood up. Your Honor, if I may, these withdrawals weren't impulsive. They occurred over 3 consecutive days across 5 accounts, and we have travel records showing Ms. Marshall was vacationing in Aspen during this time, not in emotional distress, but actively spending. She handed over a folder. The judge flipped through the pages. Receipts, hotel bills, Instagram posts, and finally the kicker. A photo of Lauren and Thomas poolside, champagne in hand, timestamped 2 days after the funds were drained. Judge Connors looked up. Slowly, calmly. Ms. Marshall, is this you? Lauren didn't answer. Mr. Reynolds, the judge asked. Thomas cleared his throat. Your Honor, while we don't dispute the image, I would argue that the personal nature of Ms. Marshall's relationships is irrelevant to the financial dispute. The judge leaned forward. It's highly relevant when a party is accused of manipulating joint finances under false pretenses while simultaneously building a new life with the attorney representing them in the divorce. Dead silence. Thomas sat back down, jaw tight. Lauren shifted in her chair. And I just breathed. You ever watch someone lie so confidently until you hand the truth to a judge and watch their world start to crack? That's what I saw that morning. Not vengeance. Not victory. Just accountability. By the end of the hearing, Judge Connors issued a temporary freeze on all remaining joint funds, ordered a forensic audit of our financial records, and requested a disciplinary review of Thomas Reynolds' conduct due to a conflict of interest. Outside the courtroom, Lauren tried to speak to me. Gavin. I didn't stop walking. Please. I didn't know it would go this far. I turned just once. You didn't think at all. And then I left. Back to Chloe's house. Back to the strategy table. Because this was just the beginning. The morning after the hearing, I woke up to a notification from my bank. Attempted transfer flagged for review. Lauren was still trying to move money even after the judge had frozen the accounts. It was a desperate move. A dumb one. And exactly what I needed. I forwarded the alert to Chloe and Blake, my new attorney brought in after Thomas Reynolds' conduct was reported. Blake wasn't flashy, but he was surgical. The kind of man who never raised his voice but always got the final word. I'll file for a contempt of court motion, he said. But let's not waste this moment. We have their attention. Let's rattle their cage. So we did. That afternoon, Blake and I drove to the county assessor's office. Public records are a goldmine if you know what to look for. While Lauren was off spending, she'd also been investing in quiet little renovations around the house. A new patio. Custom landscaping. A storage shed built while I was gone. Paid for by my money. With receipts. We documented everything. Then we made another stop, my old workplace. While I wasn't planning to return soon, I asked HR to walk me through my disability insurance policy. Turns out, I qualified for 60% of my salary for up to a year. A steady income stream that wouldn't show up in any of Lauren's legal demands yet. The next morning, I logged into a private email account Lauren didn't know existed. One I'd used for investment alerts. Among the unread messages was a bank statement, not mine. It was from Columbia Trust. Addressed to Lauren but routed to my secondary email. A mistake she must have made when creating the account and entering the wrong backup contact. The balance? $137,840. 56. Deposits made every other Friday. Always just under $10,000. Clean pattern. No employer listed. But I recognized the timing. It matched the Fridays I was out of town. Blake's voice was calm when I called. She's been hiding money, I said. He didn't even sound surprised. Send me everything. I forwarded the statement, then sat back in the chair. Staring at the wall. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated. The next day, Blake called me into his office. I brought Megan in, he said, referring to Chloe's daughter, a third-year law student interning at a local credit union. She found something interesting. He slid a file across the desk. Inside was a chart of transfers from the Columbia Trust account, small, consistent payments going out to two other names. One of them was Harold Jensen, a former neighbor, a name I hadn't heard in years. Megan cross-referenced property records. Blake continued. Harold sold his house 2 weeks ago. Cash transaction. No loan recorded. Guess who helped with the listing? My stomach dropped. Lauren. Blake nodded. They've been working together. Maybe for months. Maybe longer. I leaned back, letting the air out of my lungs. Lauren had sold out everything. Our marriage, our finances, our home base, and now our neighbors. Harold wasn't just a passive extra. He was part of it. The whole time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me cracked open, and out of it came clarity. This wasn't a woman who made a mistake. This was someone who had engineered my downfall. But she hadn't planned on me recovering so quickly. She hadn't planned on me documenting everything. She hadn't planned on me fighting back. The next week, I instructed Blake to file a motion for full financial disclosure. and an injunction preventing the sale of any remaining assets, including investments, vehicles, and gifts exceeding $2,000 in value. Lauren responded by trying to call me directly. First, a text. "We need to talk. No lawyers. Just us." Then a voicemail. "Gavin, please. You've made your point. I was scared. I didn't know what you were planning. We can split things fairly. Just don't make this ugly." Ugly? She emptied our lives into hotel rooms, hidden accounts, and men I used to wave to across the lawn. And now I was making things ugly? I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to Blake. That same night, Lauren showed up at Chloe's house, ringing the doorbell like she still had a place in my life. I didn't answer. The next morning, Blake called. She's retained new counsel. A heavy hitter, Sandra Greer. I knew the name. Everyone did. Sandra was known for her scorched earth tactics, the kind that dragged divorces out for years just to wear the other side down. But Blake just smiled. That means they're scared. Ever notice how people only want to talk it out after their lies stop working? That's where Lauren was now. Not in control. Not even close. And the best part? We were just warming up. The hearing date was set. Monday, 10 a.m. It wouldn't be the final court appearance, but it would be the one that changed everything. Judge Connors would hear arguments regarding the hidden Columbia Trust account, the unauthorized withdrawals during my absence, and the sale of Harold Jensen's property, which we now knew was part of a coordinated attempt to siphon funds before Lauren's filing. This time, Lauren didn't walk into court with confidence. She walked in tight-lipped, flanked by Sandra Greer, her new attorney, the one with the reputation for burning her opponents to the ground. But Blake? He was calm as ever. Smooth, polished, and armed. Before the judge even entered, he leaned over and whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. I wasn't just ready. I was done being quiet. Judge Connors began by reviewing the financial documentation we'd submitted. Statements, transfer logs, deposit patterns, all painting a clear picture of deception. "Ms. Marshall," the judge said, lifting a document, "can you explain these repeated deposits into an account your husband was unaware of?" Lauren didn't speak. Sandra answered instead. "Your Honor, while the account was opened during the marriage, we argue that it was a personal asset, funded through separate work Lauren did independently, consulting and freelance real estate deals." Blake stood. "If I may, Your Honor, these deposits were timed exactly to Mr. Marshall's long-haul work schedule. We have logs, travel records, even fuel receipts. Ms. Marshall waited until he was out of town before depositing significant amounts, always just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. He clicked a remote. On the courtroom monitor appeared a spreadsheet, followed by images of Lauren and Harold, timestamped and geolocated. One in front of Harold's house, another at a bank ATM, and the final blow, a photo of them outside a mini-mart in Utah. Lauren's hand resting on his shoulder, both smiling. Taken by a private investigator. Timestamp, 2 days after she emptied our main account. The room went silent. Judge Connors removed her glasses. "Ms. Marshall, I remind you that you're under oath. Are you maintaining that this relationship with Mr. Jensen began only after you filed for divorce?" Lauren opened her mouth, but no words came out. Sandra interrupted, "Your Honor, we contend that the nature of the relationship is irrelevant to the financial claims." The judge raised her hand. "I disagree. It goes directly to intent." Then she turned to Blake. "Mr. Marshall, do you have any additional evidence for today's hearing?" Blake smiled. "We do, Your Honor." He pulled out a USB drive and inserted it into the court's laptop. On screen appeared a video, muted but clear. Lauren and Harold, arguing. In a parking lot. Her pointing at him. Him shaking his head. Then he tries to kiss her. She pushes him away. The judge leaned in. "Where was this recorded?" Blake answered, "Outside Ms. Marshall's office, 3 days ago. Our client happened to pass by and documented the exchange." She looked at Lauren. "Ms. Marshall, did you inform your counsel or this court about continued contact with Mr. Jensen during this proceeding?" Lauren, red-faced now, managed a whisper. "No." "And did you disclose the funds withdrawn from the Columbia Trust account in your financial affidavit?" Another no. The judge exhaled. I am ordering a temporary injunction preventing either party from withdrawing, transferring, or selling any property or assets without prior court approval. Furthermore, I am referring Ms. Marshall's conduct to the court's financial fraud examiner. Outside, Lauren didn't follow me this time. She stayed on the steps, surrounded by paperwork and consequences. Blake clapped a hand on my shoulder. We've got them boxed in. She knows it. Sandra knows it. The judge definitely knows it. I nodded, but my hands were still shaking. It wasn't adrenaline. It was release. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe without a weight on my chest. That night, I sat at Chloe's kitchen table, staring at the photos again. Not out of revenge. Out of recognition. This woman, the one in the frame with Harold, the one who'd siphoned my life away while I cared for my dying mother, wasn't the same person I married. Or maybe she was. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. A week later, we got word from Sandra. Settlement offer. 50% of the frozen assets. No claim to the house. No alimony. No further pursuit of investments. It was a white flag. But Blake wasn't impressed. They're trying to cut and run before the fraud examiner finds more. If we accept now, we lose leverage. I agreed. We rejected the offer. Instead, we prepared to go all the way. Ever have someone try to destroy you? And all it does is make you sharper, colder, and stronger? I wasn't just surviving this. I was transforming because of it. And soon I'd be free. Not from the marriage, but from the part of me that ever thought I needed someone like her to be whole. The final court date came faster than we expected. The financial fraud examiner's report was damning clean, methodical, undeniable. Every transfer, every hidden account, every lie told under oath. It was all there, wrapped neatly in a 20-page document that painted a picture of Lauren not as a scorned wife, but as a calculated manipulator who took advantage of a partner during a medical and emotional crisis. Judge Connors didn't waste time. In a courtroom that was fuller than usual, 2 reporters sat in the back. She read her verdict with the same precision Lauren once used to siphon funds behind my back. The court finds that Ms. Marshall engaged in deliberate financial misconduct, willful non-disclosure, and breach of fiduciary duty in the context of marriage. Given Mr. Marshall's medical condition at the time of these actions and the intentional deception presented during initial proceedings, the court is granting the following. Gavin Pierce retains full ownership of the marital home. Gavin Pierce is awarded 80% of all disclosed and recovered financial assets. Ms. Marshall shall forfeit her claim to spousal support. Legal fees incurred by Mr. Pierce will be paid from Ms. Marshall's remaining asset share. Let the record show, the judge continued, her voice firm, that this court takes the exploitation of medically vulnerable individuals seriously. Ms. Marshall is fortunate that criminal charges are not being pursued at this time. The gavel came down. Lauren didn't cry. She just sat there, frozen. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, of consequences. Outside the courthouse, there were no cameras, no applause, just me, Blake, and Chloe walking toward the parking lot under a gray winter sky. Blake turned to me. You did it, he said. You got everything that matters. But I wasn't smiling. Because revenge isn't a victory dance. It's just peace after a storm. A few weeks later, I moved back into the house. Not because I wanted to stay there forever, but because I needed to say goodbye to it properly. The first thing I did was open every window. Let air sweep through every room. Cleanse the space that had once been mine but had been corrupted by secrets, lies, and whispered phone calls behind bathroom doors. In the living room, I found a small velvet box Lauren had hidden behind a vent. Inside, the earrings I gave her on our 15th anniversary. Still unworn, still in perfect condition. I left them on the kitchen counter. Let her come get them if she dared. Harold? He vanished. After the sale of his house was flagged during the injunction, he liquidated his remaining assets, cashed out his retirement early, and left the state. We never heard from him again. Rumor was he'd gone to Arizona, started fresh under a different last name. Fitting. Because Harold never had the spine to stay and face the consequences. He wasn't a builder. He was a runner. And I was done running. 3 months later, I sold the house. Used part of the money to buy a smaller place near Chloe's. Quiet neighborhood. Backyard with a single oak tree and a garden my mother would have loved. The rest? I invested. and I used a chunk of it to help Megan, Chloe's daughter, pay off the remainder of her law school loans. You're going to make one hell of an attorney, I told her. She smiled, eyes shining. You already did. Today I work from home. I teach coding classes part-time online. I volunteer with a men's support group once a week. Guys who've gone through divorce, loss, betrayal, heartbreak. We talk about pain, but we also talk about rebuilding. We talk about who we become after the worst of it. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry. I'm not. Anger is a reaction. But healing? That's a choice. A few days ago, I found our wedding album while unpacking an old box. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I flipped through the pages slowly. Each photo a moment of hope, now past. When I reached the last page, I closed the cover gently and slid it back into the box. Because some stories don't need a dramatic ending. They just need a clean one. Ever lost everything you thought mattered, only to realize you've been carrying dead weight for years? That was me. I didn't just lose a wife. I lost illusions. I lost fear. I lost the idea that I wasn't enough without someone else. And in return, I gained clarity. I gained self-respect. I gained freedom. Betrayal hits the hardest when it comes from those we love most. But as Gavin's story shows us, the true power lies not in how you're broken, but in how you rebuild. In love, always trust, but never abandon self-awareness. Don't ignore the little signs. Don't dismiss your intuition. And never let anyone, no matter how close, hold the keys to everything you've built. Protect yourself with wisdom, not with walls. Plan, prepare, and above all, remain calm when chaos hits. Because revenge doesn't always come in the form of anger. Sometimes it comes through quiet resilience and letting the truth do the speaking. Remember, walking away isn't weakness. It's strength, especially when you walk away with your dignity, your integrity, and your future still intact. Goodbye, my dear friends.